So what we've been talking about this since what, 6:30 this morning? Yes, since maybe
We are truly
6:15.
church geeks. That is what we are. We are church geeks.
We are. And so what we were talking about is what we'd like to do with this. And one of the pieces that I caught on this week was that we talk about our conflict in terms of people, right? So that when we talk about the hierarchies, we keep going back to Maslow's. We tend to get into Maslow's. And while that's definitely applicable to the congregation as a whole, what I want to argue is that there are systems in place that allow for the type of conflict that many of you talked about. And the one that keeps coming to mind is Doug's conflict, and probably because I'm most intimately involved with that conflict. I'm Effective Church Group has been retained as their consultant, and so I have been working with them since late last spring. And so that conflict that he had between with the organist, those who aren't in that cohort. Yeah. So this church has declined for quite a few years. Ministers don't stay very long. Their leaving tends to be contentious.
It's a church known as a clergy killing church.
It's a clergy killing church, and they've been decimated over the last year. You can say COVID, but a dynamic of COVID is, are you staying in contact with your people, right? How do you stay? How are people allowing themselves to stay connected in some way? Engagement.
How do they stay engaged?
And or has COVID become an excuse for them to leave? And
we know that on a national level, that upwards of the vast majority of churches have lost at least 14% of their congregations who have quit. They're not watching online. They're not going anywhere. They're done. And there's no indication whether they'll be back. On the other hand, 3% of your congregations have said they're never going back. They like online worship and intend to stay that way. Sorry, that's 2%. I got it confused. But in any event, there really is a pulling away from the church. Another, I don't remember what the percentage is. I think it's 32%. Barna did the study. 32%, Pew did it, and then Barna did it. And 32% or thereabouts of people have left your church or whatever church they were at and are attending another church online, because it's so easy to go tick, 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 tick and leave, as opposed to, if I don't like the service, unless I'm rude, I have to sit there through the rest of the service. There's some pressure to stay if you're physically, but there's no pressure when you're online. So there's this huge, in all our churches, we're experiencing some losses, some gains. We've got in the church that I lead in Raytown, we have a number of people who are coming from around the nation to be a part of it, but it's not enough to make up for those who have left at this point. But in any event, what Chris is saying is that in Doug's church is that it's been very much an excuse for people to go, yeah, I'm done.
Right.
And so they're having higher losses. But the fact is, they would have been having losses had COVID not happened.
Right. Okay. So I want to say that, and then I have to make do a definition. So they've gone from 170 people connected.
Average worship.
But it's not just average worship. It's participating members to 70 participating members right now. So they've lost over half of their congregation, and I would say that it's very much a dynamic of people found the easy out, and the chances of them coming back really are very slim because of the nature of the conflict that they've been experiencing, which I think is a good thing. They got to clean house without a real major standing up, walking out of worship. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things, with what she just said, that's a good thing. We often sort of cringe at that, or I've seen pastors and church members cringe at that. as if it is a bad thing to lose people. But remember, Jesus, when he had, we talked about when he did the Bart Simpson thing and said, bite me, and everyone, and he lost almost everyone. He didn't chase anybody down. He just looked at the 12 that were still there and says, well, this is your opportunity. Are you staying or are you going? And go if you want to go, but come on, this is where we're going. He didn't sweat it. He didn't worry about it. And he didn't go chase them down. Jesus never chased people down. He set out an invitation. If they wanted to follow, great. And if they didn't, he shrugged his shoulders and walked away, including the rich young ruler who it says, and Jesus loved. He really liked this guy. But when the guy said, hey, the cost is too much, Jesus went, oh, well, and he moved on down the road.
Okay, so what now where I'm going to toss us in is that, and this is where our we kept this morning, the conversation was, okay, well, what church could we use as a, as an example? And so then it was,
because
okay,
we're recording it, and
yeah,
we were afraid what happens if the church watches it,
right? And so there was we could use your church, his church, Raytown First or Raytown Christian, and just use a different name. Or then it was, well, we could use Bellevue Christian Church, where I was, and not use a different name because they have folded, and so much because of what went on. But he said, well, that was a very, very wealthy congregation. It was, yeah. And then it was, well, we could use Yates Center, the church in Yates Center Christian,
which is also closed.
Which is also, I know these churches that I pastored have closed across the.
This is the Black Widow.
Yeah, it's never asked me to come to a congregation. It's really sad.
Or denomination.
I know.
Or denominational
Forget
structure.
the denomination. Oh yeah, because
He
the
closed the
area
Northeast
went
area.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
sure. It's the guy said the hospital bed when his wife was there patting his head. He said, "You were there when I had a heart attack. You were there when I had a stroke. You were there." She said, "I've always been with you." He says, "Yeah, you're bad luck. Maybe I should take a hint here."
Or maybe that's what God has called me to do.
Oh, okay. Great.
Anyways, okay.
I should worry.
All that aside. Yeah. Not many days, a month, just about a month and a day. We'll have been married 29 years. So we.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay. So, but, and then I said, the Yates Center was rural. But then a little bit later it was, but you could replace this person at Raytown with Shirley Timbers at Bellevue, with Leonard in Yates Center. We could take Auburn First Christian Church, who had Maxine. They're just.
We know our bullies. By golly, we remember
Yes.
them. Don't necessarily remember the saints, but we do remember the bullies.
And the terrorists. I mean, because some of them were terrorists, and the guerrillas. So we could do that in any sense. But as we talked about people, it came back over and over again. The reason there can be those people at play is because there are systems in place. That there's a system to allow those kind of conflicts to occur. Does that make sense? No, maybe not. Do I need to say more?
Gone over your head?
Because I'm talking real, I can get very theoretical.
What we're saying essentially is, and we may write a book together. We're having that discussion too. Textbook church.
I think it's the textbook, but we'll work on that.
Anyway, but whether it's the textbook or the textbook church, you'll find it in almost all churches. There's systems in place. One of the systems that we have in place in almost every church is a value of niceness. The word nice isn't in the Bible. Nowhere, not one time. There's a difference between nice and kind. And
kind is a fruit of the Spirit.
And kind is a fruit of the Spirit. But kindness is being kind enough to tell the person who stands up every fourth Sunday to sing and can't carry a tune and say, kind, maybe we need to find you another ministry. But so there's the system of niceness that we don't want to ruffle feathers. We don't want to, we want to be peacemakers at all costs, even if that means allowing systemic issues going on, systems that allow bullies and terrorists and guerrillas to remain in place, to remain in church, or to remain in their behavioral patterns, as opposed to trying to get them to convert them, neutralize them, or ultimately to remove them if you need to.
Okay, so I want you to hand me those. So what I'm going to refer to, if you're able to grab these at all, and Vicky, since you're driving, please do not grab them. I'm going to look at, oh wow, I made a call out of those copies, the hierarchy of needs. So I want to talk in those terms because we're still working with this now into week 3, and we're going to add another dynamic, which is the continuum of congregational effectiveness. So you're going to see that this on Monday, it will open up. And to say a moment about this continuum of congregational effectiveness. At that point, we're going to talk about our congregations being effective, because and I may have said this at the very first, for me, what is ultimately important about congregations isn't exactly what they're doing. If they're involved in social justice ministries, if they're involved in mission, if they're involved in discipleship, what the bottom line is, are they effective in the ministry that they're doing, and are they sustainable?
And effective is, are they bearing fruit as they determine that it doesn't have to be the fruit that Bill and Chris decide, but are they bearing, if we're doing social justice ministry, are we helping XYZ number of people? And if we're in evangelism kind of ministries, are we making so many disciples or whatever?
Okay, and with this, are we changing lives? And then are we changing communities, right? And
transformation.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I've done this. Diane, you'll know, since you've had all my courses with me, if I've talked about this in other courses, or and if not, then I'll come back to it, I'll come into it in this course. But it's about outcomes and output, right? And so the outcome and the output is the immediate piece. So I have, say, a food bank, and my output is that people are being fed, right? So I'm distributing food, people are being fed, that's the output. But the outcome then is bigger than that. How is feeding people now, what are we doing to change the dynamics that cause us to have to feed the people, right?
Or are we enabling them so that they don't have to work, or don't have to find some way of contributing to the betterment of culture, or
the structure doesn't change that allow them to do that, right? I worked at a legal aid as a temp back at the end of college and beginning of seminary, during seminary, I guess, my first year. And there was an attorney there, and we were in Atlanta, and his whole focus was trying to make it that people didn't have to have some kind of a great credit score to open a bank account, which in 1990, you had to have good credit. And so the people that were disadvantaged economically and were caught in cycles of poverty, there was no way they could have a bank account that would allow them to shop and to live a little differently in ways that they could build credit scores, right? So he was trying to change systems and systemic pieces, and the church has those opportunities. So it's not just how have I changed a life or a conglomeration of lives. How are we as a church helping to change a system, helping to raise up people that can that now they can be part of changing the system? Is that making sense? So for me, that's effectiveness. It's not about the immediate output, it's about the outcome, and then changing and setting up the possibilities of changing even wider structures. So that's all of that goes into effectiveness. And then, can you be sustainable? We had a friend in Tacoma, and that church was dead and dying and going out, and they refused to close. And what he said was, then let's invest our money in doing mission and in helping the people in our community. And he said, let's just go out with a bang, but let that bang be mission. And that's what and that's what they did. They weren't sustainable, but they were able to be effective, and they were able to sustain their ministry in a way that had effectiveness. But go ahead.
And to be fair, I mean, or to be transparent, is the majority of churches in America are neither effective nor sustainable.
Exactly.
They're neither. They're dipping in their endowments. They're always struggling with money. Now, there's always going to be more ministry to do than there is money. I don't care how big you are.
Right. Even mega churches.
Even mega churches always are crying for more money because there's always more to do. But that doesn't mean they can't pay their bills. It's when you can't pay your bills that you're dipping into investments or endowments or whatever, that, you know, when there's less income than there is outgo.
So that's bringing us back to this hierarchy of needs, right? That's when you get into that survival mode where you can't pay your mortgage or your rent, where you can't pay the salaries, when you can't take care of your building, building. There's deferred maintenance that now you deferred it way too long. Capital improvements, you know, all you want is more children or more people to pay your bills. And I've heard this. He worked with a church, I'm talking about Oakland, worked with this church and was their interim for about 2 years. And then I went with them and worked with them about 9 months. And we had done all this work and all this ground, and we're thinking, woohoo. And then there's this man who's going, well, we need more people than what we've been getting so we can pay our bills. And I just wanted to whap him, you know, with my papers in my hand and go, haven't I taught you better? What the heck are you talking about? But he was caught in survival, and he spoke to me. You know, the question wasn't, oh, you're caught in survival. The question then came, will the church allow that concern to make their decision, the decisions that are needing to be made in the board? And what do then we need to do to move us as a congregation past survival, right? So it wasn't that Don was survival focused. The question was, will he get to be the one who rules that a decision, any decisions, because he's talking? And if so, what's going on in the congregation that allows for that? Making sense? Okay. So into this next week, I want you to work with this more. And if your congregation doesn't have, you know, big levels of conflict or anything, I asked him, his church is really doing awesome things. But I said to him, would you say you all are up here at being a missioning church? You know, have you, Maslow's term, self-actualized? I hate that term for Christians and for Christians, and for churches. Are you living out God's purpose for your church? Are you fulfilling your mission and your vision? And he sat there for quite a while. And I said, okay, wait, do you know I didn't ask that rhetorically? I said, I wasn't just ending the conversation or something. And he said, no, I'm thinking, I really have to think that one through. So if your church is not self-actualizing, isn't fully missioning.
In the end, we're nowhere near self-actualizing. We're several steps down.
Okay. So if your church is not fully effective and sustainable, right? If you're not fulfilling your mission, now part of that likely is you don't have a clear mission, right?
Most churches don't.
Right. And
they have a wonderful statement that sits on the wall, but it's worthless and pointless.
You know, it used to be about 10 years ago, and my guess is you could still see it now. There was a huge move back in the 90s for churches to have mission and vision statements, and late 80s or early 90s. And it was so divisive,
Contentious.
awful.
Well,
And
it took a year sometimes to come up with a mission statement, and Jesus gave us the stinking mission statement. Go make disciples.
and what we find are they're we will do this with the love of Jesus, but isn't even what you'll do. We'll be like the love. We'll take. Oh, I may be being ugly to y'all. I'm sorry. I'm not being ugly. It's just I want to push you, right?
From our doorstep, we will take the message of the gospel to the ends of the earth. They can't take it across the parking lot to their neighbor,
Right.
but we're going to go to the ends of the earth.
So yes,
How demotivating is that?
So we're always asking, what on earth does that mean? What is your purpose? Why did God put your church in this place when God does?
To make disciples.
I think it's more. It's more than that, but that's okay. All right. So, anyways, ignore the man to my left. Okay. So
This class goes really well with the church mission of the church in the world. I'm finding them going together just so well, and because that's one of the main things we just talked about this week was, why is your church here? What is its purpose?
good. Yes. Yay, David. David Avery. When I said David Avery, who teaches that course. Okay. So, mission statements, that's right. So it was such a horrible exercise. You forget I can see you up here on the screen. So it was,
which tells us what you're actually looking at.
yeah, so no, I'm panning across, but then I catch you. So it was so rancorous, that's the word I'm thinking of, that they would be, you don't get to come next week.
Okay.
Just see him slink away. Just slink.
I got birthday presents to deal with.
I know you do. We have a new Christmas tree sitting in a box over here, and we're like, when we get off, guess what we're opening?
Hey!
Yes. Okay. So that question around mission statements, you'd ask, does your church have a mission statement? And you can still do this. Actually, I've done it within the last 5 years. Does your church have a mission statement? And they'll say, well, yeah, somewhere. I saw it in a drawer. We have it. And it's like, okay.
Or it's on a frame on such and such wall.
Yeah. And in fact, I was in a church one week working with them. And I asked that question, do you have it? And they go, yeah, it's somewhere. And then someone looked up and they said, oh, there it is. It's on our wall. It's right there. And it was like.
Well, and then there's churches that, Doug Dill's church does this, where at the end of their service, they quote,
yeah,
or they read their
yeah,
mission
a lot
statement.
of churches I've been in do that. Okay, so the question then is can you, oh my, that's a whole different conversation. I don't want to go into mission vision statements and how to do those, okay? But what I do want to get to is, do you have a clear mission and vision, and are you fulfilling those? Are you self-actualized? Are you able to take all of your focus and attention and put it there?
And resources.
Resources, or are you having to deal with conflict? Are you having to get it through this person or that person, or someone or something keeps taking you off the focus, right? There's the veering. And what happens in a lot of congregations is you're tracking and you're on the trajectory, but something or happens, and now you're here, and you start to go like this, and next thing you know, you're way off course, and you're not there. So my question has to come back. What do you need to do to come back into to hit this next level? So I want to try this with Bellevue, I think.
Sure.
But we could mix in another church window. Okay, just making sure. So in this one church, they had at one point had 600 people in worship. They had fired every pastor along the way, and
not necessarily always publicly. That the various groups would go to the pastor and say, you need to leave, and some of the pastors didn't have any backbone and tell them that, yeah, maybe, but not now. But anyway, every pastor had been asked to leave.
Right. And if you were to look at Bullard, it would look like they were probably at an intensity 3, where there's competition within a group or between groups. It was, they'd gotten to win-lose. They probably needed conflict mediation, but they never allowed it to be public enough that you could get to where you knew there was a need for mediation. It was always pastor pointed in there. And
Always the pastor's fault.
always. And it finally got to, while we were there, we saw intensity 5 and the starting in of intensity 6, where in 6 you're going to people outside of the congregation, and it focuses in on their integrity. And we've seen this, again, we've seen this in churches, numerous churches, where people go out and they speak illy of the church or of
In
the
public
pastor.
places.
Yeah. Okay, so in that church, they lost people along the way, and they were getting to survival, down to survival. How are we going to pay for our building? How do we pay salaries? We're going to have to let go of staff. They didn't really deal with repairs or capital improvements. They would talk about wanting younger families and wanting more children. And then there were these systems at place where the children would be run off, and those families were, they said they wanted children, but then their systems didn't allow for children. And even when we had proposed solutions for how to get past survival, the question became, long timers in the church, and we're talking at that point, a group of people, 12 out of about 100 of the original, there were 12, a group that just that system was in place that didn't allow for the movements ahead. Although we got past safety and security, one of the pieces there was that Bill and Melinda Gates, there was, or I think still is, a program in Bellevue, Washington, where the community college has mommy and daddy and me, parent, whatever, adult and me programs that are learning programs and social programs for preschoolers. And Melinda Gates brought their son. And then when their daughter, he got into, he was school aged, then she came with their daughter. And you always knew when they were there, when they
Came to her building.
My building. Yeah, at this church, the church I pastored. And you knew they were there because the SUV with the 2 armed guards were in our parking lot running security. So our building had to be secure. In fact, we had somebody who messed with the locks one night, and they got there and they had to turn around and leave because the building was not safe and secure. So that tossed us a little bit, but overall we were okay with safety and security. I guess the gates were our test as to whether we were safe and secure. But love and belonging was the huge issue that got in the way of us missioning and being sustainable and effective, because people knew people left and there was this underlying mistrust. And when it came time for me to leave, I was able to say to the regional minister, what this church needs is an interim that can help them with trust and the conflict, the internal conflicts that have gotten in the way of them being able to trust one another. So love and belonging was there. Could they welcome? Well, the congregation doubled, and the people that came in, there was critical mass going on there, and they were able to do welcome and to accept one another. But this wider group and the system that had built over the course of 40 years did not allow for that, right? And it's easy for me to say, and I just said it, right? You heard me say this, I'm sure. Well, there were these 12 people, there was this group that was there, but the question has to come back. What system was in play that allowed that to happen.
It allowed those 12 to continue to be in leadership and to, in some ways, bully the church.
And this is one of the reasons, going back to George Bullard's works, that who needs to what do you need? A mediator, a conflict management, and again, most of you have heard me say, I do not believe in conflict management. You need conflict intervention, but you cannot manage conflict. It's either healthy or unhealthy.
Conflict manages you.
Yeah, conflict manages you. I like that a lot. So, do you need a consultant or an arbitrator? Definitely. Yeah, you definitely need, when you get to that level 3, 4, you need to have a consultant come in. And I would differ with George that I would bring in a consultant probably by intensity 3, because you can avoid going deeper into your conflict if you've got your mission and vision well into place. Does that make sense?
If everyone knows where the church is going and everyone's bought into where the church is going, except for a few people who are making the issues, but you get your 12, if you will, to buy into, or 10 of the 12 to buy into, then it's really much easier to say to the 2, this is the wrong bus for you. You need to find a different bus.
Streetcar.
Whatever.
It's the wrong streetcar.
Yeah, you go with your streetcar. I'll stay with, you can do your bulletisms, and I'll do Jim Collins.
That's not a bulletism.
I know it's not. It's a Tenny-Brittianism. KTV.
You heard it here first, friends. Okay. The Indigo Girls, if you know the Indigo Girls, they had an album, or have an album. There's a song called Get on the Bus, Y'all. But I'd like, get off my streetcar, y'all. All right. Anyways. So they were dealing very much with love and belonging at this church I've been going on about. And then that had affected long-timer self-esteem in particular. So that self-esteem, we couldn't get in firmly into evangelism, leader development. And yeah, so I'll leave it there. So what I want you to look at your congregations this coming week, as you're looking at your congregations, it'll be, seeing here, I've got to look at so as you look at them, I want you to think on that hierarchy of needs, thinking that where you want to be is effective and sustainable. You want to be fulfilling your congregation's mission and vision. And the question becomes, what prevents you from doing that? Now, you may say, as some of you already have, we don't have a mission and vision in our church. That's definitely a problem. So I want you to think into it. Let's say that your mission and vision is in place. All right, let's do it from that. Let's suppose that you have a very clear mission and vision. What is it then that will get in the way of your fulfilling it? My method of consultation is what is it that will let you be effective? What does it mean to you to be effective and sustainable? And sustainable is just a given, right? You've got all your survival pieces, and safety and security have to be in place now. So what is it that will allow you to do that? Where are you now? What's getting in the way of that? So what do we have to work with that? What tools do you need? What skills and practices do you need to learn that will help you move up? But what's going to get in the way of that? So I look at where you want to be or want to be, where you are, and I ask, what's the bridge now that we have to build to get from here to there? That's what I want you to think. But it's not what is the bridge you need to build. It's what's going to get in the way of whatever bridge you're building.
You're looking for the rocks. You're looking for the obstacles, the things you're going to have to get over. You're not looking for the solutions at this point. You're looking for what will keep us from being effective and sustainable.
So I've just tossed a lot of things out.
Can I toss in an example maybe?
Yes, Cindy, please.
We had an elder meeting this week and I'm not saying anything bad about our pastor, okay, but he's on vacation. And we have had a conflict, you might say, in that some people have had COVID that we didn't know it. And that was probably because we haven't been following up with the people that haven't been showing up at church. So the elders took it upon themselves to start a shepherding flock division among the elders to just take a certain amount of people and call on them every day. And that I know is a solution, but the rock you're talking about, Dr. Bill, is that this has been brought up before and the comments have come out that, well, we did that before and it didn't work. And that would be a rock. Well, at this point in time, we have different circumstances and it might work.
Right. That's one of the beauties of COVID, if you will, this time, is that it has forced us to reevaluate what we're doing, what we've done, and whether it'll work now. And we don't have the issues, well, it didn't work then, or it didn't work then, so it won't work now because we have a different situation now. And so even though the reality is if you tried it 5 years ago and someone says, let's try this, and we tried that before, 5 years, even a year is a long time in, between then and now. Things have changed, but now everyone sees that there's change. And so I've told congregations, this is the time, if you're going to rewrite bylaws, this is the time to do it. If you're going to restructure your church, this is the time to do it. Whatever it is, now's the time, because as you say, Cindy, it might work now, and they're willing to entertain things, to experiment, to try, whereas they hadn't been before. So this is the time, if you're leading in your church, this is the time to begin looking at, how do I get the stuff done that I wanted to get done all along?
Okay, yes, but I need to say two pieces there. One is, don't change your bylaws for the sake of changing bylaws.
Oh, right, exactly.
Okay?
You better have a good reason
Because
for
there's
it.
a number of a lot, I wouldn't say a number, there are a lot of congregations that think, well, we can solve our problems if we change our bylaws, right?
Right.
So you want to do it. And form follows function. So instead of just changing the bylaws because you think that will change the situation, be functioning, and then you'll know. So you act as if suspend a piece of the bylaws if you need to be trying to do this something different. You might have to say, let's just for 3 months. Yes, I know we have to have 12 deacons. So how about if just for the next 3 months, we just suspend that little piece, or we just set it aside only for 3 months and give it a try and see it. And if it works, then you try it another 3 months and you try it another, right? You just kind of, it's that moving this piano across 1 inch at a time to get it from point A to point Z on the other side. You just do it slowly. So you're kind of doing that. And then, in a year or so, when you say, well, why do our bylaws say we have to have 12? We've been functioning at 9. Ding, yes. And if you have a number of those things, now it's time to revise a bylaw, right? And so if you've got those pieces going, then this is a great time, a great opportunity to do that. But there's something else you said.
Dr. Chris, when my church switched to the Teams model, we suspended our entire constitution. We took everything out and just started all over again, and it worked marvelously. And when we came back together, we redesigned it, and we did do that exact thing where we cut back on deacons, we cut back on elders, because we did not need to have all those.
Bingo.
The congregation had changed. And to what Cindy was saying, we also had done that with our elders. The shepherding list that they had in the way back 10 years ago was much bigger and the elders did different things. Now we had already put the shepherding list sort of in place, and each elder has a certain amount of families that they stay in contact with. So every week or every 2 weeks, you check in with the people that are on your list. It could just be as easy as dropping them an email or just sending them a message on Facebook and saying, you know, how you doing? And it's worked great. And through the pandemic now, it's even better because we've held on to those people who may have left if no one was contacting them. And then we sit down at our elders meeting and we go through the list and everyone says, you know, do you have anything that the whole team needs to be aware of? Or, you know, is everybody doing great? And so you just go person by person or family by family and talk about what's going on. And it works great.
Yes, beautiful. So let me take and run with that for like all of 1 minute. So at the Bellevue Church, they tried this as the elders. Here's what would happen. The people, elders, many of the elders were not doing it, even though they had their people. So what they would do is go into the elders meeting once a month, and you just knew who wasn't doing it because someone would say, well, I talked to Mary Lou and blah, blah, and this and that. And then they'd start, the people who weren't, those elders would start asking all about Mary Lou. And we would take up our time talking about this person and that person. And it took a bit to say, oh, wait a second, it's always the same ones. And the ones you knew because of, you know, what people were saying, the ones you knew weren't doing it.
Right.
And that's because they were not at love and belonging. They couldn't do, they had to work with that. Where I would say your church understands love and belonging.
With a caveat, not everyone, and this is a problem in the
Yes,
disciples
yes.
intentionally, especially, is
Disciples of
disciples
Christ.
of Christ, we and the United Church of Christ as well.
Margaret,
We have a tendency to promote people from layperson to deacon to elder as if that, you know, they've been there long enough, now we're going to make them an elder. Whereas, and I mean, that's fine as a system, I guess, in terms of, you know, attaboy, attagirl. But the reality is that not every elder has a shepherd's heart. Some are administrators, some are, and if you say this is what elders do, then you shouldn't get there because you've been in church for 30 years. You get there because you have a heart for this, or you have a heart, whatever your elder board is for. Yeah.
Right.
Some churches, including disciples, have elder boards that are ruling elders. They're administrators. They run the church, if you will. It's kind of the board. Whereas other churches, and as Karen said, they have their elder team is about caring, love, and belonging. And that's wonderful. Either way is wonderful as long as you utilize the gifts there. But you run into problems, as in Bellevue, when you say to all your elders, hey, you're going to do love and belonging, and you got people who really don't love and they, you know, they're not that kind of people. They're not, oh, you know, how's it going? I hate the
because
telephone.
there was a system that
Right.
allowed for that.
Right, that's right. And the system had created this position and tried to impose something that on a new system on an old system, and the new wine in the old wineskins just didn't work.
First.
And so in the case of not the church I'm in now, but the church that I was in before, there was the elders were kind of evenly split. We had administrators and we had people who were shepherds. And so what we did is we created a shepherding team separate from our elders. And if you were an elder, you know, maybe if you had that kind of heart, you'd be on that team, but not every elder was expected to be on that team. Elders did their eldering thing, which in this case meant they prayed for bread and cup, and that's all they did. But we had a shepherding team and a non-shepherding team, and it worked really well. So we had to, as you say, you have to watch the systems and how you make them work.
Okay, so we're at 9:46, I think, and here's the 9:47. So there's one last thing I need to say. He at the beginning made reference to Pew and to Barna. The Pew is a research
Pew Trust.
Pew Trust. If you ever listen to NPR in the morning or the afternoon, they will mention the Pew Trust as one of their contributors. They are known for doing a lot of survey and research work.
Polls. They're pollsters.
Polls. And then George Barna will take a lot of that information at times, but George Barna works within the church, Big C Church, and Christians, and he also, the Barna Group also does research and builds on Pew for the Christian community. George writes a lot of books, and his group, it's called the Barna Group now. So you will see that you can get every week, I think it is, and you can get the an e-letter, an e-newsletter that will talk about what they've been studying, what they're looking at, trends that are going on. So I just wanted you to know that, who the Pew, when he referenced, and you'll hear us reference Pew and Barna.
And
so
Gallup.
You'll know, and Gallup, and most of us know Gallup. I'll call Gallup secular. They
He
look
didn't
at
start
so many
secular.
things.
Gallup's a Christian and started as Christian research.
Okay, but now
Yeah, they're
it's
pretty
not
much secular.
limited to Gallup.
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Chris,
Okay.
is Barna, is that B-A-R-N-A?
Yes, George Barna. So we have George Bullard and we have George Barna. Okay. All right. Would you like to pray us out?
Sure. Let's pray. Gracious God, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet together, to dance with conflict and dance with the realities that your church is not as perfect as it ought to be. Lord, we pray that we would be faithful in our leadership, we would be faithful in our learning, we would be faithful in our lives, that we might be the solution, not the problem.
Yes.
In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to post this as part of our lecture for this coming week. Okay.
That's good.
All right.
Have a great week.
You too.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all
Bye.
for all you're doing. Bye.
Bye.